Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Rohan Sylvester, a recruitment evangelist with Indeed, and I'm extremely excited to welcome you all to Top Jobs in India 2.0, an Indeed and People Matters initiative to help people find jobs. For our new viewers, this is an initiative to showcase companies that are hiring right now and to get a sneak peek from senior leaders about their cultures, their hiring plans for 2021, and the key skill sets they are looking for. For today's episode, I have with me Sudev Das from Unisys. Sudev
Hi.
is a global HR and talent acquisition leader with extensive international experience gained through several industries. He's worked in various industries ranging from high technology to healthcare and has worked for companies at various growth stages from established chat with Sudev and ask him some interesting questions to ensure that all of you who have joined us today understand Unisys a little better after this session. So thanks for joining us today and thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Rohan. Really excited to be a part of this session today. Thanks to People Matters and Indeed for inviting me over in this unique session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. To all our viewers, if you want to know anything specific about Unisys, please feel free to post your questions in the comment section, which is on the right side of your screen. If you're watching this episode through Facebook or through YouTube, feel free to post your questions in the comment section. We will try as many questions as we'll try to answer, as many questions as possible. So do keep them flowing in. So let's just jump into the questions that I have for you, Sudev. The first one
Sure.
is a very interesting one, especially because considering how things were last year, we are well into a new year. I think a lot of things have started to settle down, and there might be more clarity. How do you foresee the overall job market in India shaping up in the next 6 to 9 months?
I think here's what I would answer it. I think it's an interesting time right now. You're right. We've traversed that 1 year through the pandemic, and we are at a stage where things are looking better. The job market is really looking up. Also, from a perspective of businesses, I think all across there is a sentiment of growth. There is a sentiment of expanding businesses, and I think in the tech segment, if you really ask me, there is that whole opportunity which has started coming up, and a lot of organizations are dipping into it, leveraging it, which ultimately will support a lot of job growth that happens. I think it's happening at multiple levels across different industries. In some, we see innovative practices coming up. In some, even the business models have been challenged. New business models have come up. And hence, I personally believe that it's a segment which currently is going to grow. The job market is going to grow. I think candidates or prospective candidates are bullish about what holds for them, also employers, and I'm sure all of us are reading some of the releases that are coming out in terms of the volumes and in terms of the numbers that organizations are wanting to hire. So all in all, I'm pretty hopeful and positive about the sentiment, both from a business and a job market perspective as we move forward.
That's really great to hear, Sudev. I think even Indeed's data is showing something similar where there is an uptick in the number of jobs. Of course, certain sectors aren't doing that great, but the tech sector is booming.
Sure.
So my next question, which is related, is what are some of the major roles Unisys would be planning to hire for in the next few months?
I think, when I look at Unisys, I look at a company which is and has transformed significantly over the last couple of years. It is now focused around solving customer problems and more around solutions that we provide. Traditionally, we have been a products and a services kind of an organization, but that shift is towards integrating both of this and going ahead from a market perspective with an approach to solutioning and solutioning for outcomes. And that is really the significant change that we are going through as an organization. I think from an opportunities perspective, I see it in 3 or 4 major areas from a Unisys standpoint, where we will see growth, we are seeing growth, and we will see growth even in terms of jobs and numbers. The first is the digital workspace or digital transformation, as we say it. I think in a context, the kind of skills that we will require are a plethora of them, and it's not just one or two, but it's kind of supporting that entire digital transformation for organizations. So that's one big one. The other one is cloud and infrastructure, and cloud and infrastructure from a perspective is another a big forte, and I think there's a lot of growth which is happening. A lot of organizations are going cloud first kind of a situation, which translates into a significant amount of opportunities within from a Unisys perspective. I think security is another big one, and we've seen this through the pandemic as we've gone through with a lot of things getting digitized. There is a need of a lot of talent in the security space. There are different aspects of security, and I think Unisys has a significant amount of presence, both in terms of the products and services that we offer. So security talent is something that we definitely would be looking at as we move forward. I think the fourth is around applications, and applications which enable solutions to challenges and problems on the customer side. And I think we will see a significant uptake from that perspective. Now, while these are 4 or 5 business areas that I'm talking about and areas from a talent perspective, but I think if you really bring it down to specifics in terms of skills, it would be the cloud infrastructure skills that we typically look at. It'll be the security skills that we would be looking at. It would be the automation, the AI/ML kind of skills, data sciences. Those are the kind of roles that would start coming up. And we would see a significant uptake in some of those roles and skills as we move forward from a Unisys standpoint.
That's great to hear, Sudev. I think that would be one of the major focus areas for a lot of the tech industry in India and across the globe. Is that digital transformation that's been brought about by the COVID-19. So this brings me to another part of the COVID-19 scenario. This is a 2-part question. The first part is, what are some of the major locations that you're planning to hire for? And second part is an interesting one. Now, we've all been working from home for a long time now. I think some of us have done it for a year. And there have been talks about a remote workforce. Is Unisys planning to open up some of these roles to a much wider remote workforce as well?
So I think the first part of the question is very interesting, right? So which locations are we in? And I think like most of the organizations, I would say now it doesn't make a difference. I think what we've seen is that irrespective of the locations, fundamentally a lot of things have shifted. There's this whole factor of trust, empathy, the context of, I believe you, and that really has set the context now as we move forward. So it necessarily may not mean a physical office. It may not mean that I sit in front of you for you to monitor me and have that trust, okay, that you're going to work. I think that's culturally a significant shift. And that shift has opened it up for organizations like ourselves to say that it really doesn't make a difference where you're sitting, which part of the country, to the context of even, I mean, if you have the skill, we want you. That's the approach now. Rather than saying, hey, we are based in Bangalore or we are based in Hyderabad, which we are, but I think it really goes beyond. I mean, within Unisys, there's this whole new transition that we are going through in terms of looking at talent pools and looking at it very differently. As you know, Unisys has been around for some time, so there's a lot of business history that we have. We were the ones who were, the birthplace of ENIAC and UNIVAC, and that's the kind of legacy, which means there is tradition, there is history, there's that culture, and now the transition, right? I mean, it's a multi-generational workforce, and at the core of it is for everybody the purpose. What purpose am I here for, or what am I solving here for, and does that excite me? And I think now it being boundaryless completely from the context of talent and geography and things like that. It really comes down to a perspective of if the talent is sitting irrespective of where, and both internally and externally. I think that's the approach now, is to integrate it and get people across who have the talent, who believe in the context that we have set for ourselves to support our customers. I think that becomes critical. So, a long answer, but fundamentally, it really now doesn't matter. I think there's a significant move that we are making in the gig space, and you shall start seeing that soon as a part of our larger strategy to make sure we are more inclusive in how we hire people, where we hire people from, rather than a very a specific or a very narrow-based approach. So that's the significant shift that we have seen over the last year, and we've been talking about it. We've been figuring out what excites people at Unisys, what is it that attracts people to Unisys. So I think those are some of the things that we've gone through as a part of the process, and we continue to go through in terms of attracting talent to Unisys.
That's a great answer, Sudhir. And I think this opens up interesting possibilities. You would be looking at and I'm sure the viewers who are watching would also be happy to hear that, because you'll be looking at candidates you may not have looked at in the past because of where they're
Sure.
located or for various other reasons, and that's good to hear.
Sure.
My next question is related to the workforce. What are
Yeah.
some of the expectations in terms of skill sets from candidates applying for these roles that we spoke about a couple of questions back?
I think, when we come down to expectations, I think that too, I think, and many organizations are challenging that, right? So you have the traditional focus around, okay, so you have an engineering degree and hence you should be getting into an engineering job. Now, over the last so many decades, we are seeing that is transitioning to, I may be an engineer, but I'm in HR doing recruiting. And I think fundamentally what that is telling us is that, yes, education qualifications is a context and it is there, but fundamentally it's transitioning to skills. And skills more so, when we're talking about skills, it's learning is one thing, and the context of application is becoming more and more important. So if you have the capability to apply and you can demonstrate that you have applied those skills in solving real life problems or real life challenges, or applied it to a context, that becomes a very important context in looking at talent from a perspective. The other thing is, I think, experience. Now there's more appreciation to that. The experience plays a more important role than your qualification. So the diversity experience. So it's like I may have started off as an engineer, but I'm now a marketing professional. Lends the credence to that, okay, you are somebody who can learn, unlearn. You have skills that can be leveraged, not just in one function, but it's basically across. So essentially the fungibility of skills across. So those are some of the things that we are now looking at when we're looking at candidates, is what are the aspirations, what have you learned, what can you apply, and what are the skills other than your core skills that you bring to the table, which we can leverage from a perspective.
Thanks, Uday. That actually makes me feel a lot better, because you described me in your answer. I am an engineer who's now in marketing and content. So
Sure.
it's great to hear that these options and these opportunities exist.
Sure.
So my next question, this is to help us get a look at a sneak peek into what it's like to work at Unisys. If you would like to share a few words on what the work-life culture is at your organization.
Great. I think right from the beginning, it's as I said, it's a multi-generational workforce. So it means different things for different people to be in Unisys. And while we have transitioned into this significant phase of the pandemic and where we are right now, but I think work-life balance has been a context which has been set in Unisys for quite some time. I mean, whether it was a context of work from home, or whether it was a context of part-time working, those are things which we have allowed from a perspective. I think what has changed, or what is changing, is the acceptability, is the factor of trust, is the factor of empathy. I think which is making a significant shift, not just at Unisys. I think there are a lot of other organizations who are doing it, but there is more acceptability of, yes, professional at one end, but fundamentally being human. That there are challenges. If you work from home, there would be this thing. I think it's also a great segue into acceptability of people and the diversity of the kind of people. And when I say diversity, it's not just the context of, okay, gender, differently abled, but it's the diversity of different thoughts which come to the table together. And it's different because, as I said, the context of diversity is encouraging some of this. Is encouraging, okay, you understand if there's a homemaker, there are challenges. So how can we bridge that, and how organizations are looking at it? And at Unisys, we have been at it for some time. Now, when I talk about the context of diversity, there are multiple programs that we do within Unisys. There are multiple councils. So diversity for us doesn't, as I said, it means different things. At one level, it's the context of what beyond the professional work scene are my purposes. So we have different councils which support some of this, whether it is a CSR context, sports context, or it's a context that I want to promote diversity of thought process and differently able kind of people. So these programs and councils and this thing create a lot of awareness within Unisys and sensitivity to some of these things. So when you really get down to the conversation of either hiring people or looking at talent differently, I think those are the kind of things which are helping us in terms of the context of hiring and looking at different programs across. We have programs around diversity, we have programs around differently abled, we have programs around veterans, and this goes across. I think from a quotient of diversity that has increased, and we believe that the focus will only increase as we move forward. At the end of the day, irrespective of diversity, I think talent is the great equalizer, and it is talent that ultimately, stands out from that context.
That's a great answer, Sudev. And I think that need for human connection has been really amplified over the last year. And when organizations are able to inculcate it, that's great to hear. I'm going to change tracks a little bit and go back to a very specific question. Now, considering a lot of things are happening virtually, as it's very apparent to our viewers, you're in your house, I'm in my house when we're having this conversation. Yeah. And everything is happening virtually. Have there been many major changes to your interview and assessment process?
I think that's a great question. For the longest time ever, I think we in the talent acquisition community or the HR community have been trying to see how we automate and what do we do to take the entire process online. It just took the pandemic to say that it just accelerated the whole thing, because there was no alternative except doing video interviews and Zoom calls and things like that. I think as we grow, this process also has to mature. As we go down this path further, I think things will evolve. When I say things will evolve, there would be practices, programs which would come up, which would start setting the behaviors for how do we engage with each other over video, and both for candidates and in terms of talent that you're assessing, also to the context of how are you making those decisions. And I think the face-to-face meeting, whether it is over video, you always had it face-to-face. So the context was changing, that behavior was difficult. But from a perspective of looking at it and looking at somebody when you're speaking, or looking at the context, saying that I need to make a decision basis the interview I've had over video, I think is going to be ingrained in us like the face-to-face physical meetings were. But I think certain norms will evolve. From our perspective, from a Unisys standpoint, I think most of the, in fact, 95% of our interviews, 95 to 100% of the interviews have been online, and decisions have been made online. But I think from a perspective of the candidate experience, also from a perspective of the hiring experience, in terms of the hiring managers, we have been regularly checking in terms of what have been their experiences. What do they think? Is this working, not working? What are some of the mistakes we are making in our assessments and decision making? So I think it's a constant assessment that is happening right now in terms of whether it is effective and effective enough, or there are checks which are supposed to be coming in place as we move forward. And I think that space is evolving for us, like for anyone else or other organizations out there.
Oh, that's great to hear. I think it's safe to say that face to face will not completely go away in the future, but there are going to be a lot more virtual since we've managed to make it work over the year. It'll
True.
be nice.
And I think just to add, sorry, Rohan, cutting you off.
Sure,
Just
no
to
issue.
add, I think if we are looking at talent, and as I said, talent being the great equalizer, then it is important to find out ways how do we engage talent or use tools where we can interview talent. So it's while yes, face to face is great, and we will be leveraging more of it, but the reality of the whole situation is how do we go forward, and how do we enable more of such tools for us to engage and assess talent.
So now, just to change track a little bit, there are a lot of HR. Sorry, there are a lot of HR professionals in the crowd as well, amongst our viewers. For them, can you maybe talk about how has the role of TA changed during the pandemic? Are there any new skills that they need to learn or pick up?
So, and I can share that. I think for me personally, the way I look at it, from a TS standpoint, things have become much more inclusive, and they will. I mean, while we've looked at traditionally, and that's the thought I have, and I see that evolving, is that we've looked at TA professionals as TA guys who've done recruiting, who understand recruiting. But the scope of TA, and not just from a pandemic perspective, but I think it's far significantly evolved now. When I say there are components of marketing which come into play, things like, am I reaching the applicants? How do I reach them? What's the context of targeting applicants? So when we talk about passive seekers, when we talk about active job seekers, how do I get into that context? And that is totally from a perspective, if you really look at it, it's marketing, it's reaching out, it's typically challenges of that you have in startups. How do I growth hack? How do I reach the right set of customers? So I think that's one part. So the more and more I see TA evolving, you will have specialists in not necessarily the TA domain, but in domains such as marketing, data analytics, technology coming into the TA fold. And I think that really will help the TA function really evolve significantly. So I think more and more I see us evolving as a function would be a consequence of a lot of non-TA folks coming into the function and looking at it differently. I mean, I have been in TA for the longest time ever, but as you grow up, you basically start framing, perceptions, perspectives, which may or may not meet the times, and that's when you have new thinking induced into it. So I think as I move forward, I personally believe that it will evolve to, you would be seeing a lot of PA guys coming into the function and elevating the function from a perspective of the skills or the subject matter expertise that they bring in. So that's how I see it, and I think we are evolving to that context very soon. Even from a Unisys perspective, we have that hat on to say that what is it that we can do and look at. I mean, there are people who support customers, and that's a different skill set. But if you bring that into TA, that's a very interesting mix. Or if you bring a tech person into TA and say, hey, this is the problem, how can we solve it? I think those are kind of dimensions which need to come in and will come in as we move forward.
That's a great answer, Sudev. And I think all the TA professionals are looking forward to a very different future. And that's interesting and makes it quite exciting as well. So my next question is about for candidates. What are some tips that candidates? Sorry, let me do that again. What would be some of your tips for candidates to stand out in virtual interviews? Maybe virtual interviews at Unisys or in general.
I think three or four things that come top of my mind. But as I said, I think that those will always evolve. But predominantly, the way I look at it, I think when you are going into kind of any interview for that matter, virtual all the more is, I think all of us do our research. I think that's an important part about the company, what the role is all about. I think that's the most fundamental thing. But when you are basically in a conversation, so while you may call it an interview, but it's actually the connect that you start establishing, and the connect becomes very critical. When you are there physically, there are body cues, there are cues which the interviewers get on a continuous basis, what you are articulating, how you are articulating, those become critical. Now, while you can see some of that, but it's always this that, oh, I wish I was in front of him, he could have seen much more. So I think connect is an important one. Applicability of your skills or knowledge, being able to demonstrate that. That is something that a lot of people look at, and a lot of interviewers look at. Third, for me, if you really ask me, is authenticity. I mean, you really need to be who you are. While it's okay to say, okay, just because the organization has a value set, I will also call those value sets out on my post. But in the long run, it is about who you are, and it's not that in every organization you would fit in. But important thing is to assess and look at the authenticity that you come across with. And then, of course, it's about what you have, achieved. What are some of the achievements that you have had in the past? At the end of the day, let me put it this way: that the whole interviewing process or the experience is very qualitative. While I may want to say, I can attach candidate rated 5 or 4. At the end of the day, that's my qualitative assessment, and I may attach a number, and it can be different for somebody else. And the fundamentally why it is like that is because at the end of the day, we are humans, and we have this within us in terms of the way we have seen, life, or seen success or defined success for ourselves. Those are some of the things that play into how we make our decisions. And so that's critical to know. But from a candidate perspective, I would say those are the 3 or 4 important things to always keep in mind.
Thanks. That was a really comprehensive answer, Sudhir. Thank you so much. Now, just jumping back into Unisys culture. Now,
Sure.
how important is hierarchy in an organization like yours? Would you describe Unisys as having a flat structure or something else?
So, Ron, I'll be very candid. I think if you look at the business history, it's an organization which has been around, right? But I think what has happened over a period of time is the evolution. So yes, we may have been very hierarchical at a point in time, but as we have moved forward, I think all organizations want to stay current to what's happening and how do you attract talent. It's all about the talent at the end of the day. So it's become very flat. It's very now, I would say, more around customers, more around problems we are solving, more around the products we are developing. It's a flatter structure now. It's also, to an extent, I would say, as we move forward, it will become very agile. So you then come together for a purpose rather than have this hierarchy kind of a thing. I understand from a growth perspective, there's a certain level of hierarchy needed for people to feel a sense of achievement, move up, etc. But I think as we go forward, it has evolved significantly, and it will keep evolving. And I think the center point of all activities for most of the organizations is the customer. So it also depends on how customers evolve and how customers, basically look at what they are delivering. So in terms of this thing, so that's how it will evolve as we go forward. Rohan, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you for that.
No.
My next question is, are there any upskilling and training programs that you want to call out for viewers here? Anything in specific or in general?
So there are significant upskilling initiatives which are going on. There are certifications around cloud. There are certifications around data sciences. There's a significant upskilling which is going on within Unisys as we evolve. There are career lattices. There are specific learning journeys for different roles within Unisys. It is a very comprehensive, plan and a strategy to upskill people. Also, the context today, as somebody who's a part of an organization, we really understand that people want to learn on a continuous basis and apply and have the ability to apply that skill. I think the applicability of those skills become critical. So at Unisys, these are 3 or 4 things that we've looked at, and it's a very comprehensive plan in terms of helping people upskill, get certified, move into spaces where they can apply that learning and grow along. So I think those are very critical pieces of this whole puzzle, which comes together in terms of the talent and the talent strategy in the long term and the short term.
Well, that's great to hear. And I'm sure a lot of the viewers who are watching will be very interested in knowing that. And I guess digital transformation is the space to be looking at while you're
Sure.
upskilling yourself as well. Now, my last question to you directly, then after which we'll jump over to audience question. Uh,
Sure.
if you had to call out 3 things on why a candidate should join Unisys, what would that be? And I know I'm sure there are more than 3 things today, but
Sure.
for the purposes of this webinar, the 3 things that
Sure.
will stand out for you.
Sure. So, the first and foremost, I think from a perspective of the kind of work and the kind of technology we operate on, the kind of customers we work with, it's been, Unisys in the past has been in the forefront of some of the leading innovations that have happened. And there's a continuous focus around innovation around it. So I think that's one. Second, I think it's a context of the culture. It's kind of balanced nicely with the context of what your purpose is and what you want, vis-a-vis what are some of the personal contexts. So whether we're talking about learning, the context of being a part of these multiple councils and participating in activities which have a significant play in all our lives. And I think the third one is the work-life balance. So which is an important part of the Unisys culture, and it has been there for some time. Those are the 3 important things which I would definitely call out. Besides many more like growth and things like that, but that's how those are the 3 things which really stand out to me.
Thanks, Sudhir. That's actually a great answer. Work-life balance has suddenly become such an important thing, especially when that lines between work and home are kind of blurring as well.
Blurring, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's great to hear. I'm going to quickly jump over to a few audience questions that are coming up. My
Sure.
first one is, do you think work from home will continue to be in the mainstream? Do you think it will become the norm?
I think it's an important context. It's an important aspect which can't be neglected anymore. I think it's a cultural thing in terms of how important it become, but it will definitely play a very significant part as we move forward. For some, as I said, at the end of the day, for some it works very well. For others, it won't. And so you will see the blended approach coming up. But it's a mixed bag and depends on who you ask. But I think organizations would look at it proactively, and more so, like you said, it's kind of gives you that flexibility, gives you that balance kind of a thing, that if you want to go to office, you can. If you want to do it from home, you can. It's going to be a blend. It is going to be a very important part of how organizations operate going forward. Also, I think the evolution of tech in terms of how some of the jobs are done and can be done remotely will evolve. That's a space which is evolving rapidly fast with the tools and collaborative contexts coming in. So I think that will aid a lot of that also in terms of how that plays out. But it's not going to go away. It is something that candidates would expect. Experiences would be talked about in terms of both the experience, and I think a lot of organizations, including ourselves, have talked about. So we had hundreds of folks joining us during this. What has been their experience? How engaged do they feel with Unisys? And we've been doing these surveys and interesting outcomes around it. But I think that's something to be really looked at as to now. How do you percolate that culture context in a virtual kind of a scenario too?
Thanks, Sudev. I'm going to actually add to that and ask a personal question from my end, because something that's always been of interest to me. I guess prior to COVID, a lot of the time we spend adults is in the workplace, right? And it's those connections.
Sure.
And a lot of those social connections that we do have are with colleagues. And if work from
Sure.
home becomes the norm, are you concerned about those social connections going away? Are they a big part of success in organizations? Like, do you think having those social connections will make a company more successful or not? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a very interesting and a deep question, and I'm not too sure I have the answers to it, Rohan. But I'll try to
No.
attempt around it. I think fundamentally, it all stood out for me. Sorry, from a perspective when the pandemic hit, and you start questioning some of this, and a lot of us went through that introspection and looked at how do we engage? What's the context of engagement? And suddenly you realize that that was a big part of who you are. Forget about success.
Yeah.
It's a big part of how you operated. And today that has been challenged. So, what are the alternative ways of engaging? Yes, of course. I mean, do I miss the coffee with the colleagues and the laughter and banter around, this thing? Of course, all of us do miss it. The question would be that what do we do about it and what comes out of it? And there are interesting tools, contexts. People are trying out different things that are going to evolve, right?
Yes.
And similarly, I mean, for folks who go ahead out there, for sales folks, that was a big one for engaging with customers, sitting across the desk and having conversations, and that is gone all of a sudden. So it has become very impersonal. But I think there are ways and means people will figure out in terms of how we get around that problem. At the end of the day, I think resilience is a great hallmark, which will play to a big part to all of this and how we resolve some of this.
That's a great answer, Sudev. Thank you so much. I know the question was an easy one. It's just one of those things I think that's on everyone's
Yeah,
mind, and we're always been concerned about it. My next audience
right.
question is, what are your views on the hybrid work model, like working from home and from office as well?
And I think that will, a lot of organizations will adopt that. At Unisys, we will adopt that as we move forward. I think it's going to be a blend. Uh, I think more and more, and I'll come back to that fundamental. More and more, conversations around diversity and inclusions are going up. More and more, the factor that why should I limit myself to a location when I'm looking at talent? That have the noise around that and this thing has grown. I think the business has realized that the opportunity is not necessarily with this model or that. I think it has to be a blend to enable talent to be able to do, manage personal life as well as this thing. With the lines blurring, like you talked about, the context really is what will work for some and what won't work for some. And I think so. The hybrid model is an interesting one. It will you will see signs of it evolving. You'll see signs of it maturing to a context. I think there are a lot of unknowns right now as we tread into that, and some of it will be discovered. I mean, what are the norms? How do we context? So how do we engage? How do we go to work? What does it mean? What are the scenarios that I need to go to work? What are the scenarios I can be doing work from home? So I think those are things which will evolve. But the good thing is that these are now mainstream discussions within the HR community, within the business community, and that is the most significant transformation that we have gone through and we will go through as we move forward.
And with respect to Unisys, you expect it to be something like this, is it?
We do expect it. We do expect it to at a stage right now, like I said, it's evolving. We expect it to stay kind of a hybrid kind of a model. Like with any other business, you see how it works, evaluate it. But we expect it to be kind of a mode which is a blend of both, where you have this thing. I think we will also start seeing roles evolving, which will require being in office, roles which can be managed. So I think within Unisys, those conversations are on, that discussion is on to see what works best in a scenario. But I think I see that staying as a portion of the whole system as we move forward.
That's great to hear. From my personal views, also at Indeed, where I work,
Sure,
we are also going into that, and we're going to give everybody the option and tell them
sure,
you have a
sure,
choice. What are you going to do?
sure,
I think
sure.
to the person who asked this question, you can expect to see some very interesting opportunities in terms of hybrid work going into the
True.
future. Next question is a really interesting one, and I think kind of topical considering, well, last year was not the greatest year in many fronts, and a lot of people
Sure.
had to be, there was a lot of downsizing in certain organizations, certain verticals, and there are going to be gaps in their work resume. So, what are your views? Like, how should companies look at hiring candidates with any work gap in their resume or an education gap in their resume? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think at the end of the day, Ron, in some of these things, the way we look at it, in fact, at Unisys, it's a context of what you're bringing to the table. It's not necessarily about the gaps. We have a return program for people who have had gaps in their work for some specific reason. We've had moms coming back, a program for moms coming back to the workforce. So, and it is going to be about the talent and the skill that you bring to the table. I think more and more we will see the shift away that, oh, it's a break. I think the context is what was the break for and what was it. But at the end of the day, if you're bringing a talent or a skill which I need and which is critical to Unisys, I think we're going to have that conversation. We are going to look at you from a perspective of saying, okay, this is what we need, and this is how we feel you fit in. It's also a question. See, it's no more. It's a question of that. Hey, as a employer, I am the only one who decides. It's equally the candidate. He's going to evaluate us as an organization. He's going to see what fits and what doesn't fit from a perspective. So it's kind of a two-way kind of a situation that we will. But I think whether gaps or no gaps, I think it's all about the skills and the context of skills that you bring, and that's what our focus has been also.
That's great to hear. I'm sure the viewer who asked that question is probably asking it from a personal note,
Sure, sure,
and as someone who has personally had gaps in my resume, it has
sure,
not really helped me back as well. So it's good to
sure.
hear that this is a practice
Yeah,
that's
and I think Rohan, mindsets are changing. It's also about mindset, right? I mean, what are we looking at? How's the business looking at? And there are people who have a different perspective to this thing, and that's what is very refreshing these days.
Yeah, definitely. So now my last question for you today, and it's a very good one, and I know it's something that a lot of people are asking. So it's what are your plans for hiring freshers in 2021? I know there are a lot of youngsters graduating in 2021. The class of 2021 has got to be very scared, right? It's a new world, and they're coming into this world, this work world in this condition. Just your plans. Are there any plans to hire freshers?
So I think Unisys has been consistently hiring freshers, and for the last couple of years. And I think we are a great believer of going ahead and looking at fresh grad talent across. We run a program called Cloud 2020, which sees about anywhere between 4,000 to 6,000 participants from a college and a university perspective. It's a tech innovation contest, and it's been running for 12 years. So we've been hiring freshers all through, and we continue to do that. And it's an interesting program for us because groups of students come get mentored by folks at Unisys. It's kind of a 6 months program, and then you basically go ahead and present the prototype. And basis that we made a lot of hires through that. We continue to go to campuses. We will continue to come to campus even in 2021 and going forward. I think what is important is, as I said, I think this whole context of applicability, that has become a big, important context for us. So it's not just about somebody being an engineer or a grad. It's all about the skills you've acquired and skills you can deploy. And programs like Cloud 2020 give us an opportunity to evaluate some of the talent through that process. So that continues, and I think Unisys has been pretty strong on its campus program for last so many years. So I don't see that changing from a perspective. Yes, I think the volumes go up and down depending upon the business situation, but I don't see a fundamental change in our campus program or our approach to campuses, so to say.
And you'll
In
be
fact,
hiring. Sorry.
so
Sorry, please go ahead.
in fact, if anything, seeing the success of the program here in India, there are other parts of the world which are establishing and taking on establishing a robust campus program across the globe. So I think that's a positive as I see it as we move forward.
That's great to hear. And I'm assuming the freshers will be hired across verticals, including, all the new verticals you spoke about earlier, cloud and
Yeah.
cybersecurity and everything.
That's how we do it, Rohan. We take them across verticals, across businesses. So you have people focusing on the products. You have people focusing on various business unit lines that, like I talked about. But it's across, and it's a pretty evolved program, so to say. Even when grads come on board, and it is not that last year we didn't hire. I think the change was that all of them onboarded with us in a virtual situation. So I think while all of them came on board, the question for us then became, how do we engage? How do we get them a feel of Unisys? How do we get them a feel of the people at Unisys? And those are problems that I think we are past now and have a way to figure that out. But that's how it has evolved. So campus is a very important context and a part of the TA strategy at Unisys.
Thanks, Sudhir. That was really comprehensive. And I'm sure the audience has gotten some really great insights into what it's like to work at Unisys and what it takes to work for Unisys. Thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thanks so much. Thanks a lot, Ron.
And to all our viewers, had the opportunity to hear a lot about Unisys. Please do go on to Indeed and apply for jobs at Unisys if you find that this is the organization for you. And I personally would think Sudhir has given us some great insights into what it's like to work there, and it can be a very great opportunity. Thank you everyone for joining out. That's all for now. But we will be live again today at 3:30 p.m. with Genpact. So please don't forget to tune in then. See you shortly.
Great. Thank you, Rohan. Thanks, everyone, for this opportunity. Great to be a part of this conversation. Thank you.